2 years before the American independence, a handful of individuals from Manchester, England, arrived to New York Harbor. They were said to be a communal religious sect known as the United Society of Believers of Christ's Second Appearing. They believed in collective ownership and celibacy, and their religious ceremonies took the form of strong physical movement. Trance and vision were followed by bodily agitation, singing, dancing, and uttering of inspired truths. They would become known as the Shakers. Led by a woman named Ann Lee, they soon settled at a place called Niskayuna, close to Albany. Ann Lee had a vision, and she shared it with her followers. She saw their religion attracting great numbers of believers. And that was the beginning of the Shaker faith. Shaker communities proliferated throughout America. From New England to Kentucky and Indiana, the Shakers would build a society that would span 4 centuries and thousands of members, and would become one of the most successful utopian spiritual movements in the United States, influencing many aspects of American life. It all started here, in Watervliet.
Oh, bam, bam, bam. Oh, whippy, bam, bam, bam. Oh, bam, bam, bam. Oh, whippy, bam, bam, bam. Oh, whippy, bam, bam. Oh, bam, bam, bam. Oh, whippy, bam, bam, my bam. Oh, whippy, bam, bam, bam. Oh, whippy, bam, bam, bam.
But who were the Shakers? They describe themselves as follows: "We believe we have debtors to God in relation to each other and all men, to improve our time and talents in this life in that manner in which we might be most useful. Labor to make the way of God your own. Let it be your inheritance, your treasure, your occupation, your daily calling."
The Shakers originally came from Manchester, England, which is where many people know that the Industrial Revolution really took place first. They were a group of people who were interested in spirituality that had been meeting informally together for a number of years and discussing theology and their own beliefs. They had been going into churches in Manchester and disrupting the church services and telling people that they should, instead of following the faith that they were following, should look to what this group of people were saying, and that was that in order to live a pure life, you should be celibate, you should have communal ownership of goods, you should be pacifists and lay down your arms. And so it was not a very popular thing for them to be doing, and so they frequently were being beaten and thrown into jail and persecuted for their beliefs in Manchester.
Black slaves who would turn to the Shaker community according to the rules would gain their freedom. Thomas Jefferson once wrote about them that their socialist practices of shared property and civil disobedience would carry us back to the times of darkest bigotry and barbarism. Abraham Lincoln had reservations with their pacifism and their request for exemption from going to war. And yet the Shakers were also valued by the world, as they called them, as honest and hard-working people. Shaker shops sold clothing, furniture, and preserves to nearby towns, and Shaker schools were considered among the best.
Well, I think they always figured that they were honest people to do work with, to trade with and anything. My father used to, in his store, used to buy some of their canned vegetables because they canned different kinds of fruits and vegetables, particularly tomatoes, up until the early 1920s. And he used to have their vegetables on his shelves in his store. But people knew they were very kindly and give you the shirt off their back, as the saying goes. Mm-hmm.
The history of the Shakers experiment in America started here just outside of Albany during the winter between 1776 and 1777. They had managed to lease a parcel of land from the Van Rensselaer family, so they were participants in the manorial system and were required to give a part of whatever crops they grew or food that they might have been able to generate to the Van Rensselaer family. They finally had a parcel of land. It was set apart from other people out in the wilderness, and they could freely begin to build their idea of what this heaven on earth might actually look like. The question of who Mother Ann Lee was is very difficult to answer for many reasons. She was an illiterate person, so she didn't leave any kind of journals to tell us what her thought processes were when she had revelations or anything like that. We do know that she was a child worker in Manchester, England. We do know that the working conditions for children in Manchester were very, very difficult. There was a high child mortality rate, so certainly she came from a very rough beginning. Her father was a blacksmith, and oral tradition says that she really reluctantly entered into a marriage that with another blacksmith that really wasn't successful and ultimately did end after she came to America. It seems that she was the kind of person who may have had a really good understanding of human nature. On the one hand, with one person, she might have had a very harsh approach and said, you know, if you don't join our religious group, then you're going to be a lost soul and you'll forever regret that you haven't joined us. And with another person, she might take them by the hand and say gently that, you know, this really is the best place for you because we have the true lifestyle here. We're living in the way of Jesus Christ, and this is a good life here. So my sense is that she really had an understanding of human nature.
Shortly after the Shakers had settled in Watervliet, Mother Ann started a trip throughout the United States to spread the Shaker faith. Her long trips, which would last for several months, took her as far as Kentucky, and she converted hundreds to the new religion. The Shakers benefited from a wave of revivalist faith that spread throughout the rural areas of the young United States. But this was not an easy task. Ann Lee was imprisoned and accused of witchcraft repeated times. Tired and ill from the physical toll of her missionary enterprises, Mother Ann returned to Watervliet in 1784 and shortly died after. She is buried here in the place where she founded her faith.
Each Shaker community would consist of several different family groupings that were economically distinct and also geographically separate. They were arranged around the church family, which is where the meeting house, the main church, would be located, and that's where the most spiritually devout Shakers would live. That's where the ministry would live, the leadership would live in the church family. There was at Watervliet a north family, which is located between the area that is now the Albany International Airport and the Watervliet Shaker site and the Mohawk River. And the North family made a great deal of flat brooms. The flat broom was invented at the site, and we believe that they were also doing quite a bit of commerce later on along the Erie Canal and the Mohawk River because it was only a few miles away. The West family is naturally west of the Shakers church family site, and they, like most Shaker families, were occupied with agricultural pursuits and were making a wide variety of food products that they would sell to the outside world. The South family, which is located just about a quarter of a mile away from the West family, was the novitiate order. That's where new converts would go and live initially until they could decide where they would be best suited to fit into the larger community. And it also served primarily as the children's order. This type of spirituality being revived among the Shakers, but on the other hand, it wasn't the leadership who was having these visions and getting these gifts from the spirit world. So it caused a great deal of conflict as well as a great deal of excitement. And it led to the impetus for all of these wonderful gift drawings and the wide variety of different kinds of songs that were being written at that time, dances, and visions that they were receiving.
You just have hundreds and hundreds of songs being written by children, by inspired brethren and sisters, where the melodies are literally coming into their head and the next moment coming out of their mouths. So Shaker music was almost always in unison, no harmony. But in the early 1840s, there were about 3 songs that we know of where the Shakers were given the gift of harmony by the angels so that they could then finally sing in harmony. It's kind of funny because it seems so deliberate that someone probably thought, oh yeah, I'm going to get the gift of harmony, you know. And the harmony is so simple, it's nothing at all like what harmony, you know, can be. But it was obviously pretty thrilling for them to have these very simple harmonies finally.
They had some beautiful singers in that day too. They did, surprisingly, they did a lot of part singing. They had altos and sopranos, and we usually did at that time also have musical accompaniment on the organ. Mm-hmm. The singing was pretty nice.
Did you sing also other times besides just during the...
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Every Sunday evening we would meet in the sisters' waiting room where we had dinner this noon. There was a piano there. This was for the teenage girls. And we'd have just an evening of learning songs and singing them. And interestingly enough, they were not all particularly Shaker songs. A lot of them were the old gospel songs. Mm-hmm. So we learned a lot of those.
Leap and shout, ye living building, Christ is in his glory come. Cast your eyes on mother's children, see what glory fills the room. Full of glory, all in motion, skipping like the lambs in May, dancing in their sweet devotion, how the blessed virgins play. Once it was our best devotion, in our guilt to weep and pray, to our Father while our notion fixed him far above the sky. There we strove to stretch our senses when we tried to sing or pray. Now our Father and our Mother are with us from day to day.
In the Shaker world, there was no art for art's sake. No object should be made without a purpose. Yet every single object made by the Shakers has a unique and distinctive imprint, an expression of perfect form that we can only see as beautiful and artistic. For the Shakers, every object had to be beautiful because every action was an offering to God.
It's difficult for me to say this because we have friends who make Shaker furniture and who have been very generous to us in doing workshops and things, but the Shaker furniture that people have made who are not Shakers, there's no religion in it. It's something that they perceive would be an excellent thing to sell to the world. Certainly like the style and the simplicity, but see, I've always felt that when people take a tour of our museum and they see these beautiful objects, that it's because, I mean, why does a wooden bowl and a shovel and a table last all of these years? Because until the items that are now in the museum were placed in the museum, they were used daily. And I think it's because of the people who made them, their religion was truly in their work. You know, hands to work and hearts to God is the Shaker motto that Mother Ann gave to us. And that has truly been put into effect by everyone who made anything. That was done with that idea that putting your hands to work as you gave your heart to God, and the two came together. I think that's why we have such beautiful objects. And also another expression of Mother Ann's that we try to live by is to do all of your work as though you were going to die tomorrow, and yet if you might live 100 years. I think those were really put into effect, and that is why such beautiful Shaker things remain.
The Shakers also initiated the garden seat industry. The Shakers invented the first washing machine, as well as many mechanical devices for carpentry. The inventor, Gail Borden, worked with the Shakers to invent the process for making condensed milk, using a Shaker vacuum pan used for the production of sugar. The hard labor and demanding communal life of the Shakers started to lose appeal amongst potential converts. Towards the middle of the 19th century, communities started to decline in numbers and grow in age. Toward the third quarter of the 19th century, communities started to close one by one. In Watervliet, the West family property was sold in 1915, and the North family property was also sold 4 years later, paving the way for the construction of the Albany County Airport. The Church family farm was sold in 1924, and later acquired by the County of Albany. The last Shaker family in Watervliet, the South family, closed after the death of the Eldris Anna Case in 1938. On that day, the bell of the dwelling house was tolled for the last time in Wisdom's Valley. Watervliet, the cradle of the Shaker faith, would go through a series of transformations that are representative of the way American society has evolved, with new structures in place, such as a playing field, an airport, highways, and commercial buildings surrounding the original Shaker land. In today's America, one might ask what is to be learned from the Shaker experience. The Shakers, like other religious groups, were seen as fanatics and the world as something alien and eccentric. And yet, there was a coherence of vision in their faith and in their actions that to an outsider becomes clear by looking at their works and listening to their songs. There's also an essence of American spirit in what they did. Aaron Copland and Martha Graham, in creating the quintessential American work, Appalachian Spring, based their inspiration on Shaker songs and dances. At a time when we ask ourselves of the state of the American spirit of freedom and the belief of mutual understanding that became the foundation of this country, it is useful to remember the most famous Shaker song, Simple Gifts, a song that summarizes these ideas. "'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free. 'Tis a gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, it will be in the place of love and delight." The journey that started here, in Watervliet, may now be far away in time, and yet what remains here is an enduring artistic and spiritual legacy, a vision of a perfect conjunction of all aspects of human activity. The Shakers proved the enduring nobility of remaining true to one's ideals against all odds and all ages.